I just wanted to do a quick little epilogue or follow-up video on this series, because there's a couple things that I meant to mention that, I kind of went off on some tangents and forgot to say. First of all, I just wanted to mention that the Bible, we have manuscripts from the Old Testament, literally over 100,000. I think it's actually over 200,000 from times dating back to up to 1,000 years or more before Constantine. And as far as the New Testament goes, we have literally hundreds of thousands of manuscripts of those existing far before the time of Constantine, over 200 years before Constantine was even born. And the most amazing thing about the Bible is this: people say, oh, the Bible's changed, and how do you know what version you're reading? There's 10,000 different translations and so on and so forth. But the amazing thing about it is the Bible is, and the scriptures are, the most concordant manuscripts on earth from ancient times. They're over 99.7, I think, or maybe 97% concordant. In other words, you'll only find differences between these thousands and thousands of texts, that are very, very minor and can be reinforced by the other texts, and so we've managed to put together a nearly, if not 100% perfect translation of the Bible and its old manuscripts. And the amazing thing about the internet today is that we can, go to places like Bible Hub and then easily compare and contrast all of the different translations that are available today. And yes, some are definitely better than others. A lot of people claim that, the Freemasons put together the New Testament the King James Version and all that stuff too. And I would like to say that there is an element of influence with spiritualism in some of the terms that were used in the King James translation, which is why it is so important to get a strong foundation on the teachings about life and death and the physical resurrection and things of that nature. For instance, the word hell was actually, in the Greek, the original word meant the grave, and the same thing goes with the Old Testaments. And hell was the name of the Norse underworld. So we have kind of a conflation there with people, and all the connotations and imagery that comes along with hell versus the grave and its meaning. And that is because of the Gnostic spiritualist influence on the philosophies of Christianity, especially during the days of the early church on up through the Middle Ages and so forth. But at the end of the day, once you learn how to identify Gnosticism and how it goes against everything Christ stood for, and even beyond just the words. The Sermon on the Mountain is one thing, but the act of what he did, of a physical death and a physical resurrection, can give you more than enough context to understand how to identify Gnosticism. And Constantine and Eusebius were dedicated to that, and so were the early church bishops, the ones who survived the persecution of Diocletian and the early Roman Empire, like Nero. He created all these false flag incidents to blame the Christians, so that they could basically eradicate them. But it just grew out of control, and they saw it as the greatest threat to the Roman Empire. And so, yes, while there was a conversion with Constantine, Gnostics and people who wanted to hold on to this Platonism compromised the teachings and started writing all these Gnostic Gospels, like the book of Judas or Thomas or Mary Magdalene, or there's a lot of books where you can, if you understand the Babylonian religion and Gnosticism, where you can easily identify those influences, and they're just very obvious once you really learn to identify them, especially like in the book of Thomas, when Jesus was kind of a mischievous young lad, and he played tricks on people, and then eventually he goes down into the realm of the underworld, which was the Greek Hades or the Norse hell, and while he was dead, he wasn't actually dead. He was just in his spirit form to go and go liberate the spirits out of the realm of hell. And once you learn the Babylonian teachings about the underworld and the spiritual vessel in this body, you can see the motivations behind teachings like that. And so, and I do believe that God had his hand on the development of the early church and the conversion of Constantine in order to ensure that there was a differentiation between Platonism and Christian thought, and so that could be codified in the Bible so that the world could have access to it. And like I said, it's just so important to learn historicism and learn that the crown on the white horseman's head, the Greek word was Stephanos, not diadem, which means it was Roman laurels on the white horseman's head, and that the 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 vials of Revelation were judgments on the Roman Empire. And just the reading of Daniel and understanding the 70th week and why the people who rejected Christ and the Kabbalists tried to teach people that the 70th week never happened yet and it was put on pause. It was 70 weeks, 70 times 7. This was one of the prophecies of Daniel that was supposed to begin with the decree to rebuild the second temple, and that was 456 BC. And if you count, the 483 years, the first 69 weeks, the 70th week of Daniel lands right on 27 AD when Christ began his ministry, and then ended the temple sacrifice 3.5 years later, and that the apostles were martyred and killed for the next 3.5 years until the gospel finally went to Paul and went to the Gentile. And it's important to understand the motivations of the people who wanted to deny that 70th week never occurred, and who wanted to basically deny Jesus and deny that the covenant had passed to a new Israel. And also just with Romanism in general, that was why the Kabbalah and Romanism made such a good team, like two horns of a beast almost. And they sought to hide the identity of the abomination that causes desolation, and the Antichrist figure at the head of the church claiming that he has the powers of God to forgive sin, and this little horn power that rose up out of the ashes of the Roman Empire to dominate the earth, and all of its teachings about God and man and life and death and Christ and all of these things. And so, when you really study historicism and look at least entertain and learn about how the reformers understood Daniel and Revelation and the people who were martyred and killed, then you can understand why the Catholic Church and the Roman Church was so intent on rooting out and eradicating anyone who harbored a Bible or translated a Bible or even dared to read it. Okay, that's why the Bible was illegal for over 1,000 years. It's because of those prophecies. And even if you're a futurist thinking that there's a 7-year tribulation ahead and the 4 horsemen haven't came yet, or if you're a preterist thinking that all this Antichrist stuff was about Nero and Antiochus, I implore you to at least take the time to learn historicism and learn why the Roman church, the beast, believed that the Bible was such a threat. And then you can see that Freemasons and the Roman church definitely did not write the Bible.